Biblical immorality and the slavery abolition myth. It is a popular sport where atheists on the one side of the court rage against the Bible for its supposed backward morality at best, or outright immorality at worst, demonstrated by, among other things, its tolerance of slavery both in the New and Old Testaments, whilst pointing out what fruit the more sophisticated morality of our secular modernity has afforded us all: emancipation both from the physical slavery of man peddlers and intellectual slavery of religion peddlers. Discomfited Christians on the other side often quickly come back with two common arguments. In the first place, it is Christianity that brought about the abolition they offer. Who doesn't know of John Newton, of the Amazing Grace fame, and his efforts at abolition after being converted from being a man peddler himself? It is, they claim, the view of the sanctity of life imparted by Christianity that raised us to the humanity that we presently enjoy, giving equal rights to all men. Secondly, the Christians love to accuse the atheists of reading the Bible without a sufficiently sophisticated eye that can account for the prevailing cultural context in which the Bible was written. Slavery was part of every culture, they argue, and the law was given with the expectation that it will be progressive and eventually bring us to the moral maturity that we now see. The atheists retort that Christians participated in the abolition movement despite their religion, not because of it. It just so happened that we all had grown up and realized slavery is barbaric, and Christians came to the same realization as well. In any case, did not George Whitefield, the celebrated evangelist, own slaves? And so on goes the interminable argument, each side claiming to be the one that dressed the emperor. The only problem is that the emperor is still naked, and he knows it. It's time for the rest of us to admit it. To be sure, what John Newton did was great and commendable, but no, John Newton did not abolish slavery, and neither can anyone. So that there is no ambiguity, let us clarify that not only does the Bible tolerate slavery, it approves it, both in the Old and New Testaments. There wouldn't be regulations governing slavery, both in the Old and New Testaments, if God considered it a moral obligation for masters to free their slaves under all circumstances. As it is written, for example, in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 18, "Slaves, in reverent fear of God, submit yourselves to your masters, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh." Paul, the great apostle to the Gentiles, would not have sent Onesimus, the runaway slave, back to Philemon if he believed that Philemon was doing wrong by keeping Onesimus as a slave. Having clarified the biblical position on slavery, our task is to answer one question: is it just, or is it not? It is important at this point to get our definitions right. What exactly do we mean by slave? Here is a good online dictionary definition. Slave: a person who is forced to work for and obey another and is considered to be their property. There are several ideas that need proper unpacking in this definition before we can pronounce ourselves confidently on the issue of slavery, like the idea of personhood, or force, or ownership. What do we mean by all these terms? This is in part the task of this series of articles. But before we don our scuba gear and sink into the depths of definitions, let us assume for a moment that we know exactly what we are talking about and supply, emphatically, that slavery was not abolished. It is here with us, alive and kicking in almost every sane society. If a slave is a person whose life is directed by another against their will, perhaps they are told when to wake up and when to sleep, and where to sleep when they do, and how far from that place they can go when they wake up. If perhaps they are told what to eat and how much to eat, what to do with their time when they are awake, including making money for their masters, then slavery never went anywhere. It is here to stay. But let's take it a notch higher. If a slave is someone whose very life is at the disposal of another, so that the other can decide when they live and when they die, then slavery never went anywhere, and it is here to stay. You see, if there is one thing that human beings excel at more than any species, it is the art of self-deception. We do it in many creative ways, and one of the most effective ones is wishing away reality by changing its label, like a grown-up male magically becoming a woman simply by relabeling himself a woman, or society ending slavery by relabeling the slave prisoner. But what exactly do we think those people are behind bars? Aren't they told with strength of force when to wake up and when to sleep? Where to sleep and how far they can go from where they sleep? What to eat and how much to eat? What to do with their time, including engaging in economic activities in which they benefit nothing? And aren't some of them from time to time told they have lived long enough and relieved of their breath? Just because the master in the previous case was an individual, and now it is every individual in the state through the agency of central government, does not render the master inexistent. And just because the government pronounces the enslavement of the men behind bars righteous through a legal process, does not render it any less slavery. It only renders it righteous slavery. Now, in some societies, in most of the modern ones, the government is a section of the population. In others, in many of the previous ones, every man of a certain age was part of the government. At least, every man formed the military and police, and so any man could execute a sentence against a convict by imprisoning him if he was not able to make retribution in some other way as specified under law. One has to wonder, though, which model is better: to allow a man to live with his family as he pays his debt by slaving for someone else, contributing meaningfully to society, or to rot away, largely idle, food-starved, sex-starved, alienated from his family for years in the company of other criminals at the expense of the taxpayer. In any case, can we all calm down and accept the fact that in the modern world, slave ownership is no longer a privilege of the rich only? Thanks to central government, we are all slave owners, and I suspect, happily so. Most of us will be only half relieved if a man who abused our 2-year-old daughter was committed to lifetime slavery in a prison rather than let loose. Perhaps a more satisfactory outcome will have involved the man's entire neutralization. So, should we feel ashamed of the fact that we are not only condoning but rejoicing in the barbarism of slavery? No, because it's not the slavery that makes us feel good, it is justice that makes us feel good. And justice makes us feel good because we are made in the image of a just God who has ordained that crimes meet their just retribution, but who also offers mercy in the midst of judgment by, in many cases, allowing men who should die to become slaves instead. In this article, contrary to both secular and popular Christian thinking, we argue from a biblical worldview that God has ordained slavery as an indispensable and surprisingly merciful expression of retributive justice, and no one has nor will abolish it. Now granted, with all that God has ordained, man is capable of abuse, but the abuse of an ordinance does not render the ordinance abusive. That John Newton stole men from Africa and sold them in England is, as the Bible agrees, evil. As it is written in Exodus chapter 21 verse 16, "Whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him, shall be put to death." That does not mean, however, that we should now empty all prisons.